The third match day of the 2016 Olympic Women's Soccer Tournament has coming on, and we have all 8 spots of the quarterfinals filled. The quarterfinals will be played 2 days from now, on the 12th, which will be Friday. And I wanted to look back on the action from yesterday, talk about some of the games, what they mean, and then give a quick little preview of what to look out for in the quarterfinal round. So, the first games that were played yesterday were the Group F games, which is the second group in the women's tournament. It's EFG. So, and keep in mind, like with a lot of the international tournaments, these games were played simultaneously, which I do like. I think it's cool to um, it. It's good not to know either, or maybe you know what your opponent's doing, but it's happening at the same time, so you can't plan on, okay, they're gonna win by 2 goals, so all we have to do is draw, or all we have to do is only lose by 1 goal, and then we'll advance. You don't know what they're gonna do, so that makes it fun. Real quick, before I talk about these games, I wanted to mention 2 things. I don't want to take anything away from what's been going on the field because it's been a really good tournament, but I did want to mention 2 things. The first thing is that, before I forget, the first thing is that I would really like to see this tournament go to at least 16 teams. The men are currently at 16. I think they could even do more, but 16 is a good solid number. I know there are logistical scheduling issues, so I know you. It's not just as simple as, okay, we're gonna put 16 teams in there. But I would, if they could figure it out with the scheduling, I would love to see this tournament go to 16 teams. And the other thing that I've been really thinking about, that I've debated back and forth on, is the idea of third place teams advancing. And I have to say, over the past couple of tournaments where this has been the case, so in the Women's World Cup last year, um, there were third place teams that advanced. In the men's Euro Cup this past summer, 2016, there were third place teams that advanced, and then of course in this tournament there's third place teams that advanced. And I have to say, on the whole, I don't think it's a great idea, and I would love, or not love, but I would like to see it eventually phased out if possible. The reason I don't like it that much, um, I don't want to use the word simple, but it's just so much cleaner just to have the top 2 teams from each group advance. And I also think it creates for the best football because if you're a team and you know potentially we only have to be in third place to advance, there is not that, or there isn't as much incentive as to go for it. And I understand that sometimes, even if just a top 2 advance, a team can be going into their third game and only have to get a draw or only have to lose by a goal to keep their goal differential intact. I get that, but it just seems like in so many of these tournaments where third place teams advance, it seems like teams, um, it it can be a little too advantageous to go into just a total shell, put 11 players behind the ball, and just you know look to look for a 0-0 draw or only concede 1 goal. So the funny thing is that if you're either a player, coach, fan, whatever of a certain team, and your team is one of the teams that advances in that third place spot, obviously you're gonna like it. But I think, and I'm no exception to that. If there was a team that, like I said, I was either playing for, or coaching, or supporting, and they were gonna advance because they were in that third place spot, of course I would feel like, oh, thank God we had the third that rule in place for this tournament. But on the whole, if you're objective about it, which I think is the key, you can't let personal feelings get in the way of it. I think that I would have to say, for my opinion, and I think most people would have to say that it makes for just an overall better tournament just to have those top 2 teams advance. So I just wanted to get that out of the way real quick. I don't want to take away from anything that's going on the field. This has been a great tournament, and the knockout round should be really exciting. So with those 2 things aside, I just wanted to mention that um, maybe in a different video I'll take a longer look at the different tournament dynamics. But I just wanted to mention those 2 things. All right, now for the actual games on the field. The first 2 games of the day were Germany versus Canada, and playing simultaneously to that was Australia Zimbabwe. What Canada went into this game with 6 points, top of the group, and then uh, Australia was only on 1 point. Germany was on 4. So there were a lot of different scenarios that could have played out, depending on, I think most people assume that Australia would beat Zimbabwe, but the Germany's Canada game was somewhat of a toss up. And then also there was a question of the goal differential between Germany and Australia if they wound up with the same amount of points. And that's actually what happened. So in the Germany Canada game, which was a really good game, I really enjoyed this game. And one interesting note was Canada, they didn't rest all their players, but some of their top players in their lineup did not start. So Christine Sinclair didn't start, Becky didn't start, and Khadijah Buchanan didn't start, but she didn't play because, at least in part, because obviously she couldn't, even if they wanted her to play, because she was on the double yellow card suspension, 1 game suspension. She'll be back for the quarterfinal. But anyway, Germany got on the board first. They had a penalty, a penalty called against Canada. Germany converted, went up 1-0. I thought Germany was on the front foot for most of the beginning of the game, although Canada was right there with them. But I thought Germany looked really solid in the first, 15, 20 minutes. Towards the middle of the first half, Canada equalized thanks to Melissa Tancredi on a really nice goal, actually. So it was 1-1, one in the halftime at 1-1. And at that point, if that result held, then Canada would have still won the group, won 7 points with the draw, and then Germany just would have moved up to 5 points. And what that would have done is it would have clinched Germany finishing ahead of Australia for that second slot, because they would have been on 5, and then even if Australia beat Zimbabwe, they would have only been on 4. But what ultimately happened was Canada took the lead on another goal on Melissa Tancredi, so they went up 2-1, which if that result held, which it ultimately did, then Germany was stuck on 4. Canada actually won all 3 games to finish on 9 points, and Australia did in fact beat Zimbabwe to get the 4 points. So the way the group actually finished was Canada was on 9 points, Germany and Australia both on 4, with they both went 1-1 and 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss, and then Zimbabwe went 0-3. I would quickly mention with Zimbabwe, I thought that they overall played pretty well. They had a really solid game against Canada. Were in that game almost the whole game. And although the 2 games versus Australia and Germany were a little lopsided, I thought that they competed. They actually scored a super late goal against Australia, which showed that they were still competing. And I think it was good just to see them make their major tournament debut, and we'll see what they can do moving forward. But in terms of how the group actually finished, Germany finished up in second to get that automatic spot into the quarterfinal stage, and also that's important. Not only do they get into the quarterfinal stage, but that's where they're slotted in the that F2 position in the draw. And then Australia, there was a potential question of whether they'd advance to the third placing, but they ultimately did, and I'll get to where they are in the knockout stage in a sec. So 3 teams advanced in this group. Canada in first, Germany second, because they had 1 goal better differential than Australia, and then Australia advanced as one of the third place teams. So the next group that played was Group G, which is the third group down, and the 2 games in that group were the USA versus Colombia and France versus New Zealand. I thought the U.S. Colombia game was really fun to watch. I give so much credit to Colombia in this game because they largely were out of it going into this game. There was a mathematical possibility that they could advance, but it would have been really difficult. So it could have been easy for them just to sort of, pack it in and just sort of not give 100%. But it was the total opposite of that. From the first minute, they were flying around, making tackles, creating scoring chances. And it wasn't because the U.S. wasn't playing well. The U.S. had a little bit of a different lineup than what they've been going with. But overall, it was a very uh, it wasn't that much of a change lineup where you would credit it to that. In terms of how the game actually went, um, the Colombians actually scored first on an awesome free kick goal by Catalina Uzme. If you didn't watch it, I would um, Google them. She actually had three really good free kicks. The first one, which is the one she scored on, uh, was she did well to get it through the wall, and then it came to Hope Solo, and it beat Hope Solo through the legs. Um, Certainly, Solo probably should have, or not probably, she should have saved that. But it was still a solid free kick from Uzme just to put it on goal. So many times you see it, fly over the net or hit into the wall. So that's what can happen even against a really good goalkeeper like Solo. I know it's a cliche, but if you put it on net, good things can happen. Um, and then the U.S. struck back thanks to Crystal Dunn. One of those where the ball's just kind of bouncing around the box. Carly Lloyd had a shot that went off the crossbar actually, and then it just bounced. Crystal Dunn was there, put it in. So went into halftime, 1-1, and all the U.S. actually needed was a draw in this game to clinch that first place spot and win the group. Um, so if it stuck to 1-1, they would have done that. France in the other game, if the U.S. would have lost and been on 6 and France won, which they did, then France would have probably on goal differential have passed the U.S. And uh, overtook that first spot, and then the U.S. would have finished second. France, I'll get right back to the U.S. game, but France did win. They won 3-0 against New Zealand. Really good to see them bounce back from that tough loss to the U.S. And I think they're looking strong going to knockout round, so I'm looking forward to what they can do. Back to the U.S. game. One thing I did forget to mention was Megan Rapinoe got the start, which was her first game back since her injury, and it was good to see her out there. She didn't do too much, just in the sense, in terms of like a great scoring chance or something. But I thought overall she looked good. She kept up with the pace of the game, which is always tough when you're coming back. I thought she had a few nice crosses, maybe a little rusty, but that's to be expected. They took her out almost exactly on the half-hour mark and replaced her with Mallory Pugh. So I wanted to mention that it was good to see Rapinoe back. When she's healthy, certainly she's a huge part to this team. Um, so then Mallory Pugh came in, right, like I said, right about the half an hour mark. So at halftime it was 1-1. And then in the second half, um, again, it was a very competitive game. There were times when the U.S. was really assertive and controlled the possession and created the chances, but Columbia had their moments for sure, and they were competing hard. Mallory Pugh, right around the towards the middle of the second half, scored on a goal. Another one of those where it's kind of bouncing in the box, sort of like a scramble. Pugh gets on it, just a great play from her. Slots it home, puts it in the back of the net. Great goal. So the U.S. goes up 2-1. So it continues like that, and then in the 90th minute, Colombia gets another free kick. Uzme takes it, and a super free kick. Another one where maybe it could have been saved if Solo had better positioning, but I credit this one more to the free kick taker. That was a difficult free kick she took, and there's not every keeper is gonna make that save. Some of them will, but I'm not gonna criticize the keeper for that. That's just a really good free kick, and that's how it ended. It went on for about 2 or 3 more minutes in the stoppage time, but nothing really came from that, and so it ended up 2-2. As a draw, which, as I mentioned earlier, that's all the U.S. actually needed in the end to move on to 7 points. France finished second in this group with 6. And then New Zealand finished third in this group with 3 points, but unfortunately for them, They were the unlucky third place team to not advance. They only had three points when the other two groups, the third place team in those groups were on 4 points. So that's why Australia and Sweden advanced. It's unfortunate for New Zealand because I thought if they did get into the knockout stage, they could have caused an upset. I thought that they played well, really, in all three games. Um, so it's a little unfortunate for them, but they acquitted themselves really well in this tournament. And then for Colombia, they finished fourth with 1 point. And again, I give them a lot of credit for playing well against the U.S. And I think that they're a team to keep an eye out for um, moving forward. They had a solid, or more than a solid, they had a really good World Cup last year. So I think that it's good to see them progressing a bit. So now moving on to the knockout stage. Um, the way it is in most tournaments, when there's only the top two, it's all predetermined. So if you finish first in this group, you're here. Second in this group, you're here. And this one, there's a little question. You don't know for sure who's going to be where because it just depends on which third place team advances. But the way it wound up was, I'll just run through this super quick. So the first, at the top of the quarterfinal draw is Brazil versus Australia. Below that is the U.S. Sweden. So the winner of those two games will meet in the semifinals. Then the bottom half of the draw we have Canada v France and China v Germany, and that's how it looks. All eight of those teams are. Or you know what? I forgot to mention the Group E games, so I'll do that super quick. Both of them ended in a 0-0 draw, which was really surprising. The China Sweden game. Was super tactical. I think both teams kind of knew what they had to do to advance. The Brazil game was a little more surprising, but again, they basically had it clinched that they were going to win the group, so they didn't have to do a ton. Credit to South Africa for playing hard in that game, and again, they're another team that has impressed me the past month or so. So just giving a quick what to look out for in the quarterfinals. I think it's great because all eight teams are super competitive. There's far from a pushover. So August 12th, that's when those games are, and they're all none of them overlap at all, which is good. So if you want to watch one in particular, or two in particular, you'll be able to because they don't overlap, which is good. So yeah, so really good tournament so far. It's gonna be exciting. The Canada-France game, wow, that's gonna be a. Dave both looked really good. That's gonna be a tight one. U.S. Sweden hasn't. I had high expectations for them coming in. They haven't done super well, but this is their chance to prove themselves. Brazil v Australia. That's a rematch of a World Cup game last year that Australia won. It's kind of unfortunate that they have to play again, to be honest, because I think that they both would have a chance to go pretty far. And then China, Germany. Germany's probably the favorite, but I don't count out China; they can play. And then the U.S., the defending champion. I think maybe it's a slight hiccup going into the knockout stage on that draw, but I don't. I think when you win the group, there's nothing to. You can't complain about that. Just like with Brazil, they ended that group on a draw, but they won the group. There, there's only you can't expect perfection in tournaments like this when you're playing the best teams in the world. That's just how it works. So I'm really looking forward to these games. I hope that they're all compelling, tight. I think that really all four have the chance to be like that. These are some good matchups. In a sense, like I said, it's maybe a little unfortunate that Brazil and Australia have to play, or that Canada and France have to play. But if you think about it, like I said, all eight of these teams, you can mix and match them in pretty much any way, and there'd be two tournament favorites playing against each other. So it'll just be an awesome knockout stage. I'm really looking forward to it. And So thank you for watching this video. Get ready for Friday. It's gonna be a great day, and I'll be sure to recap those games once they're played. So talk to you soon.